On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected. Cyd Charisse, the iconic American dancer and actress, passed away on June 17, 2008 at the age of 86, following a heart attack. Her death, from natural causes, marked the quiet end of an extraordinary career that had once dazzled the golden age of Hollywood. Though not surrounded by the political storms or tragic violence that defined some historic deaths, Charisse's passing nonetheless reflected a broader cultural moment, the fading of classic cinematic glamour and the graceful twilight of a bygone era in American entertainment. Charisse rose to fame in the 1940s and 1950s as a statuesque, fluid dancer whose performances redefined how femininity, strength, and artistry were portrayed on screen. In films like Singin' in the Rain and The Wagon, she danced opposite legends such as Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, not merely as a supporting partner, but as a visual and emotional centerpiece of the productions. At a time when Hollywood musicals offered post-war audiences escape and aspiration, her work embodied elegance, discipline, and a uniquely American optimism rooted in performance and spectacle. Her death came at a time when digital technology and shifting tastes were rapidly transforming how audiences consumed entertainment. The Hollywood system that had once groomed stars like Charisse no longer existed, and her passing reminded many of the artistry, rigor, and studio polish that had characterized her generation of performers. Unlike the tragic falls of some of her peers, Charisse aged with grace, retired quietly, and remained admired for her refined persona, an image that contrasted starkly with the era of tabloid celebrity that followed. In the immediate aftermath of her death, tributes poured in from dancers, filmmakers, and historians, acknowledging not just her talent, but her role in elevating dance as cinematic language. Charisse had helped make dance not a diversion, but a form of emotional storytelling. Her legacy endures in film archives, dance schools, retrospectives, and even the affectionate homages found in modern musicals and television. Like other legends of the silver screen, Cyd Charisse is immortalized in movement. Her performances captured forever in celluloid, still gliding across polished floors, elegant and defiant of time. Her death reminds us that while mortality ends a life, it does not end the impact. Through memory and media, she continues to inspire a world that still finds joy in grace, rhythm, and poise. Gloria Vanderbilt, an emblem of American aristocracy, fashion, and reinvention, died on June 17, 2019, at the age of 95 from stomach cancer. Her death, though peaceful and natural, marked the end of a life that had been anything but quiet. Born into wealth during the height of the Jazz Age, Vanderbilt's life mirrored the sweeping transformations of 20th century America, from the Gilded Age echoes of her childhood to the media-saturated modern era she helped define. Vanderbilt's passing came during a time when America was grappling with questions of identity, privilege, and legacy. Her story offered a poignant lens through which to examine these themes. As a child, she was at the center of a sensational custody battle between her mother and aunt, dubbed the trial of the century by 1930s media. This early exposure to public scrutiny would foreshadow a life lived in both glamour and shadow. Later, she would transform herself into a designer and businesswoman, helping to popularize designer jeans, one of fashion's most democratizing trends, in the 1970s and 1980s. Her pivot from socialite to entrepreneur reflected the changing expectations of women and the growing fusion of celebrity and commerce, The immediate aftermath of her death saw a wave of retrospectives celebrating not just her artistic sensibilities and business acumen, but also her emotional resilience. Her son, journalist Anderson Cooper, offered a deeply personal tribute that reminded audiences of her humanity beneath the fame. Rather than fading into obscurity, Vanderbilt's death reawakened interest in her contributions to American culture, fashion, and personal storytelling. Gloria Vanderbilt's life and death invite reflection on the enduring complexity of fame, inheritance, and self-definition. In a world where legacy is increasingly shaped by public narrative, her story shows that reinvention can be as powerful as inheritance. Through art exhibits, biographies, interviews, and fashion archives, Vanderbilt continues to be remembered not merely as an heiress, but as a creative force who dared to shape her destiny. Her death underscores how mortality, though inevitable, does not extinguish influence. We immortalize figures like Vanderbilt through the cultural artifacts they leave behind, be it a painting, a pair of jeans, or a quote in a memoir, reminding us that memory, like fashion, is a canvas for reinvention. Atrell Cordes, better known by his stage name Prince B, was a central figure in the early 1990s hip-hop and R&B movement as one half of the group PM Dawn. He died on June 17, 2016, at the age of 46, from complications related to diabetes and renal disease. His death, while from natural causes, was shaped by the broader social and health issues that affect many in the African American community, particularly the long-term impact of chronic illness and the disparities in access to quality health care. Chords rose to prominence during a transformative time in American music. PM Dawn's ethereal sound, blending rap, soul, and pop, stood in contrast to the emerging hardcore styles that defined much of 1990s hip-hop. Their breakout hit, Set Adrift on Memory Bliss, which sampled Spandau Ballet's True, exemplified a dreamlike vulnerability rarely seen in rap at the time. Cordes, with his philosophical lyrics and melodic delivery, represented a different kind of masculinity, emotive, introspective, and spiritually questioning. The era during which PM Dawn thrived was marked by the tension between authenticity and commercialization in hip-hop. While some dismissed their softer style as less real, others saw them as pioneers who expanded the genre's emotional and artistic boundaries. Cordes's health struggles later in life, eventually leading to the amputation of a leg and other complications, mirrored the quiet struggles many artists endure behind the spotlight. His declining health and eventual passing were largely overshadowed by the fame of his earlier years, a reminder of how quickly the industry can forget those who do not conform to its prevailing narratives. The immediate consequences of his death were not seismic in the mainstream, but for fans and fellow artists, it reignited appreciation for his musical innovation and the emotional depth he brought to hip-hop. Artists and critics revisited PM Dawn's catalog, recognizing it as ahead of its time in embracing themes of love, vulnerability, and existential reflection. Cordes's death invites broader contemplation on how society remembers artists who challenge norms quietly rather than loudly. Through samples, retrospectives, and genre-blending musicians who followed, his influence endures. We immortalize figures like Atrell Cordes not only through their chart-topping hits, but through the emotional space they carved out in a cultural landscape, spaces where softness was once considered a rebellion. His legacy reminds us that even fleeting voices can echo far beyond their final notes. Jean-Louis Trintignant, the legendary French actor known for his haunting introspection and refined restraint, died on June 17, 2022, at the age of 91 from natural causes following a long battle with prostate cancer. His death marked the quiet conclusion of a career that had spanned more than 6 decades and bridged the evolution of French cinema. from its post-war reawakening to the introspective realism of the 21st century. Trintignant's passing reflected both the grace and gravity with which he lived his artistic life. He was never a flamboyant celebrity. Instead, he embodied a deeper, more contemplative archetype, the thinking man burdened with unspoken emotion. His most enduring roles in films like A Man and a Woman, The Conformist, and Amour dealt not with action or spectacle, but with the psychological landscapes of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. In this way, his death aligned poetically with the themes he often portrayed: mortality, love, silence, and the quiet dignity of acceptance. The immediate response to his death was heartfelt but understated, much like the man himself. Tributes from across Europe highlighted not only his artistic achievements, but also his moral and intellectual depth. In France, where cinema is both an art and a mirror of national identity, Trintignant's loss was particularly poignant. He had become a symbol of a golden age in film, as well as a reminder of the power of subtlety in an increasingly noisy world. Trintignant's life was not without tragedy. The murder of his daughter, actress Marie Trintignant, in 2003 cast a long shadow over his later years and deepened the sorrowful wisdom he brought to subsequent roles. His performance in Michael Haneke's Amour, as an elderly man caring for his dying wife, took on a near autobiographical quality, making his own final exit feel like a coda to a life spent exploring human frailty. In remembering Trintignant, we confront not only his death, but also the passing of an era where restraint and intelligence defined masculinity on screen. His legacy is preserved through his films, which remain masterclasses in understatement and emotional truth. Statues and street names may fade, but the quiet brilliance of Trintignant lives on in every whispered line, in every pause pregnant with meaning. His death reminds us that greatness can speak softly and still echo forever. Arthur Franz, a versatile American actor known for his roles in 1950s war films and science fiction classics, died on June 17, 2006, at the age of 86. His death was due to heart failure, a natural cause that marked the quiet end of a man whose career once resonated with the pulse of mid-century American values. Unlike the dramatic exits of political revolutionaries or cinematic icons, Franz's passing was subtle, reflective of the often overlooked character actors whose contributions quietly shaped Hollywood's golden era. Franz emerged in post-World War II America, a time when cinema was deeply intertwined with national identity and ideological messaging. His frequent portrayals of soldiers and earnest professionals mirrored a society striving for stability, heroism, and moral clarity after the chaos of global conflict. Notably, his performance in The Sniper, 1952, offered a rare and disturbing glimpse into mental illness and violence, challenging audiences to confront uncomfortable realities during a time when such themes were seldom addressed openly. His death did not provoke widespread media coverage or public mourning, a reminder of how fame can fade even as influence lingers. Yet among cinephiles and classic film scholars, his work remains respected. His passing underscored the ephemerality of supporting fame and how cultural memory tends to prioritize leading figures, often neglecting the essential players who enriched the broader tapestry of film history. In a broader sense, Franz's death reflects the challenge of preserving legacy in an age of rapidly shifting attention spans. Whereas figures like Cleopatra or Lincoln became immortalized due to the dramatic circumstances of their deaths and the historical weight of their lives, Franz's impact was quieter, more nuanced, yet still worthy of remembrance. His death invites reflection on how we define legacy. Is it shaped by scale, spectacle, or the steady, consistent craft of a lifetime? Humanity's relationship with memory is selective, but art offers a form of preservation. Franz may not adorn statues or headlines, but his performances endure on film reels, streaming platforms, and within the scholarship of cinema history. Through this medium, his contributions are continually rediscovered, reminding us that even modest legacies can echo across generations, etched not in marble, but in flickering frames of black and white celluloid. Patsy Burn, the beloved British actress best remembered for her comedic turn as the endearingly daft Nursey in the historical sitcom Blackadder 2, died of natural causes on June 17, 2014, at the age of 80. She passed away in Denville Hall, a care home for actors in London, a fitting final chapter for a woman whose life had been deeply devoted to the theatrical arts. Her death was quiet and dignified, echoing the understated presence she maintained in an industry often dominated by louder personalities and larger egos. Burn's career unfolded during a time when women in British comedy and drama were carving out space for themselves in both classical theatre and mainstream television. She trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art and spent years honing her craft on stage with the Royal Shakespeare Company before transitioning to television. This era celebrated range and discipline, values Burn exemplified with her ability to shift from Shakespearean tragedy to absurdist farce with ease. Her death marks the loss of a generation of performers shaped by repertory theater and classical training, actors who brought depth to even the smallest roles. Though her passing did not create widespread media waves, it prompted a wave of affection from fans and colleagues who remembered her warmth, wit, and impeccable timing. In an age when celebrity often overshadows craft, Burn's legacy reminds us that impact can come not just from starring roles, but from creating unforgettable characters who live on in the public's affection. Nursey may have been a supporting character, but she became iconic, her comedic cadence and innocent absurdity serving as a perfect foil to the biting satire of Blackadder. Her death didn't shift the trajectory of British culture, but it did cause a moment of nostalgic reflection. The response revealed the collective affection for a type of performer who prioritized craft over fame and served as a linchpin of ensemble storytelling. Patsy Burn's legacy lives on not through towering monuments, but through laughter, reruns of her performances, stage anecdotes shared in green rooms, and affectionate impressions by fans. Her death reminds us that memory is not reserved for the powerful alone. Sometimes the echo of a gentle joke, delivered with heart and timing, can immortalize a figure in ways even power cannot. Mohamed Morsey, Egypt's first democratically elected president, died on June 17, 2019 under controversial and troubling circumstances. Collapsing during a court session in Cairo, he died of a heart attack after reportedly being held in solitary confinement for nearly 6 years, with minimal medical care. His sudden death was officially described as natural, yet human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, cited grave concerns over his prison conditions, suggesting state negligence played a role. Morsey's demise reflected the turbulent values and unresolved struggles of post-Arab Spring Egypt. Elected in 2012 after the revolution that toppled Hosni Mubarak, Morsey represented both hope and controversy. As a leading member of the Muslim Brotherhood, he promised democratic reform, but his presidency quickly polarized the nation. His ousting by the military in 2013, led by then-General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, marked a dramatic return to authoritarian governance and sparked deadly crackdowns on Morsey's supporters. His death, therefore, symbolized the death of that brief experiment with electoral democracy in Egypt. The immediate consequence of Morsey's passing was international outcry and scrutiny of Egypt's human rights record. But within the country, the response was muted, an intentional silencing, some critics argue, to erase his legacy. He was buried under tight security, without a public funeral, reinforcing the government's effort to minimize his symbolic power in death. Rather than amplifying Morsey's personal legend, his death became a broader commentary on the cost of political dissent in modern autocracies. For many across the Middle East and beyond, Morsey became a martyr, not necessarily for his policies, but for what his rise and fall represented: the fragility of democratic dreams in a region scarred by decades of repression. His story now lives on in reports, documentaries, and public discourse about the Arab Spring's failed promises. While statues will not likely bear his image and Egyptian state media avoids his name, Mohammed Morsey is remembered in exile communities, in academic analyses, and in digital memorials. His death underscores a timeless truth: power often resists change, and those who challenge it walk a perilous path. Yet history rarely forgets such figures, and memory, even when buried, has a way of resurfacing, demanding justice, reflection, and reckoning. Jeff Chandler, a silver-haired star of Hollywood's golden age, died unexpectedly on June 17, 1961, at the age of 42. The cause of death was a blood infection and complications following back surgery for a spinal disc herniation. What began as a routine procedure spiraled into a fatal medical crisis after a surgical mishap, reportedly involving a major artery being severed, which led to multiple operations and eventually his death from sepsis. His passing shocked both Hollywood and his fan base, occurring at the peak of his career. Chandler's death echoed the fragile line between masculine ideal and human vulnerability, a tension that often defined the post-war era. Known for his deep voice, rugged charm, and stoic portrayals of warriors and Western heroes, Chandler symbolized a brand of mid-century American masculinity rooted in physical strength and moral clarity. His roles in films like Broken Arrow, 1950, for which he received an Academy Award nomination for portraying Apache leader Cochise, reflected an era grappling with themes of racial understanding, heroism, and cultural conflict. Yet his sudden, preventable death peeled back the invincibility his screen persona suggested. The tragedy highlighted a medical system less regulated and far riskier than today's, particularly in elective surgeries. His death helped prompt further scrutiny into hospital safety and patient care, especially for public figures whose influence brought attention to systemic issues. In the aftermath, Chandler's legacy was both celebrated and mourned. Hollywood, which often consumes and replaces its icons swiftly, took a pause to honor a man whose career had steadily climbed. His final film, Merrill's Marauders, 1962, was completed posthumously, casting a poignant light on his lasting presence. The film itself, a gritty war narrative, further etched Chandler's image as a noble soldier of cinema. Chandler's death speaks to a broader human theme: our cultural impulse to mythologize those who die young and seemingly at the height of their powers. His image was immortalized through posthumous tributes, television retrospectives, and the enduring popularity of his films, which continue to air on classic movie channels. His early death helped preserve his cinematic identity in amber, a screen hero forever poised between action and tragedy. In this way, we remember him not just as a man, but as a symbol of a bygone era, frozen in time through art and memory. Pamela Britain, best remembered for her endearing role as Lorelei Brown in the 1960s sitcom My Favorite Martian, died of a brain tumor on June 17, 1974, at the age of 51. Her passing, while due to natural causes, underscored the fleeting nature of television fame and the quiet tragedies often hidden behind the smiles of America's favorite on-screen personalities. Britain's death came during a time when television had become the dominant medium for entertainment and cultural messaging. She was part of the generation of actresses who transitioned from Broadway and film to the small screen, bringing warmth and relatability to mid-century American households. Her roles frequently embodied the era's expectations for women: charming, nurturing, comedic yet composed, mirroring both the optimism and the constraints placed on women during post-war America and into the 1960s. While Britain was not a headline name in the way of contemporaries like Lucille Ball, her death still sent ripples through the industry. For many, she represented the countless character actors who carried shows with consistency and heart, but were often under-recognized in their time. Her passing reminded the public of the often unseen personal struggles of entertainers, particularly women in Hollywood, who faced both immense pressure and limited longevity in their careers. There was no media frenzy, no drawn-out spectacle. Yet in the decades since, Pamela Britain's legacy has been preserved through syndicated reruns and nostalgic tributes to classic television. In this way, her death, while not seismic in historical terms, has helped amplify appreciation for the essential players who shaped the early days of modern entertainment. Her passing also invites broader reflection on mortality and remembrance. While historical giants are often memorialized through monuments and textbooks, figures like Britain are immortalized through the laughter they once brought, the warmth they delivered through the screen, and the roles that continue to introduce them to new generations. Pamela Britain's death and enduring presence in cultural memory highlight humanity's need to preserve joy and connection. Whether through reruns, fan conventions, or digital archives, she lives on, an emblem of a bygone era, reminding us that even quiet departures can leave enduring echoes when love, laughter, and legacy intertwine. Tarcisla de Amaral, one of Brazil's most iconic modernist painters, died on January 17, 1973, at the age of 86, from natural causes. Though her passing did not make global headlines at the time, it marked the end of a visionary life that had profoundly influenced Latin American art and culture. Her death, occurring in an era marked by political repression under Brazil's military dictatorship, served as a quiet yet poignant contrast to the bold, expressive energy that defined her art. Tarcisla was a key figure in the Brazilian modern art movement and a central participant in the 1922 Week of Modern Art in São Paulo, which revolutionized the nation's aesthetic identity. Her vivid use of color, abstract forms, and incorporation of Brazilian folklore and landscapes helped shape a unique cultural voice during a time when Brazil sought to define itself independently from European traditions. Her paintings, such as Abaporu, became visual manifestos for the anthropophagia, cannibalist movement, which symbolically devoured European culture to create something wholly Brazilian. The peaceful nature of her death stood in contrast to the turbulent world she once sought to transform through radical artistic expression. By the time she passed, Brazil was under authoritarian rule, a far cry from the cultural optimism that fueled her earlier work. Her death did not initially produce a dramatic cultural rupture, but over time, her contributions were re-evaluated and recognized as foundational to Brazil's artistic heritage. In the years following her death, Tarcisla's legend grew. Exhibitions of her work traveled internationally, and academic interest in her role as a pioneering woman in modern art surged. She was posthumously celebrated not only for her technical innovation, but also for her political symbolism, a woman who painted Brazil in bold, unapologetic colors when the world often saw it in monochrome. Her legacy has been preserved through national museum collections, scholarly studies, and public monuments, and her influence echoes in contemporary Latin American art. Tarcisla de Amaral's death reminds us that cultural revolutions can begin not only with grand gestures, but with the patient brushstrokes of those who dare to imagine differently. Her life and passing reflect the enduring power of art to challenge, define, and immortalize a people's identity, even when the artist herself is no longer there to witness it.